It literally felt like somebody took my heart and grabbed it from the front, not like a reach around. No, this actually felt like that scene of Indiana Jones, the Temple of Doom, where the priest reaches into the guy's chest and pulls out his heart. It's still beating for everybody to see. Vigorous Steve here. In this episode of Storytime, I'm going to tell you guys all about that day I almost died from a heart attack running 50 milligrams of pharmaceutical grade Anavar per day. And when I say heart attack, I actually mean something else entirely, but it's still very similar. It's called Prinzmetal angina, also known as vasospastic angina or variant angina, caused by coronary artery spasms or spasms of other arteries surrounding the heart. And this, over time, if it happens long enough, can actually result in a heart attack. Now, I'm sure some of you guys were thinking about a different kind of angina when I'm talking about angina. That's something different entirely. And even though when constriction occurs in that kind of angina, that can be very pleasurable for both you and for her, when actual angina occurs, the constriction of the blood vessels or the heart itself, this can be very, very scary. You get numbness, you get chest pain, maybe even your left arm gets slightly numb. You get this tingling sensation, and now you have to sit in the corner of the gym wondering if this is going to be your moment. And that gives you a whole nother level of anxiety just by itself. So again, it's very, very scary when this occurs. This is the main reason why I decided to discontinue high-dose pharmaceutical Anavar and always tell people why you shouldn't escalate the dose upwards above 25 milligrams Anavar per day. Because, anything over that can cause some serious side effects. That's what I experienced. So this is my story of how I never went higher than 25 milligrams pharmaceutical Anavar ever again. And before we get into it, please like the video, leave a comment for the algorithm, and consider subscribing if you haven't already. If you want to vote for upcoming deep dives, you can do so by joining the YouTube or Patreon memberships. And otherwise, you can join the weekly Q&A, which is always on Saturday. We have 1 hour, 1.5 hours for private members, so you can get your questions answered without this giant herd of general population which wants to get their question in afterwards, right? We go private first, and then we go public, and then I'll select which questions I want to answer. All right, we'll have to rewind the clock a little bit, but not as far back as the 1000 milligrams trembolone sandwich per week video or the 50 milligrams of Anadrol pre-workout video where I tore both hamstrings in 2 different scenarios. So this is only a couple of years back. I think it's around the time I met my wife, and around that time I went to the pharmacy trying to source my PEDs here in Thailand, in Bangkok. And whoop-de-doo, I found pharmaceutical grade Anavar in the form of Meridian Bonavar. 2.5 milligram tablets. They come in a packet of 50 tablets. So one strip contains 10 tablets of 2.5 milligrams. And if you go with 1 strip per day, you get some serious results. So at that time, I thought, you know what? If 1 strip per day gives me these great results, 10 times better than the 100 milligrams of Anavar I ran way back in Holland when I only had access to underground lab Anavar, maybe 50 milligrams per day is better. I've already done 1,000 milligrams of trembolone acetate per week. I've done crazy high dosages of boldenone and primo and mastrone and whatever else. Let's see how strong I can get doubling the dose from 25 milligrams to 50 milligrams Anavar per day. And I wish I had a package for you. I'll display the packaging on the screen so you guys are well familiar with what this Meridian Bonavar actually looks like. Unfortunately, at this point in time, I'm currently off cycle, and that means there's no performance-enhancing drugs in the house, just to prevent temptation. And well, since I'm trying to get my wife pregnant at all, and there's no actual clinical evidence that Anavar oxandrolone is beneficial in the context of improving your fertility, like halotestin or proviron, actually has some scientific evidence up until the 90s, give or take. Right? There's no oxandrolone, no pharmaceutical grade Bonavar in the house. If you haven't watched that video yet, I'll display it on the screen. I'll link it at the end of this one so you can do your due diligence researching steroids in the context of fertility. Give that video a watch. I put hours into it. Please watch it. Please boost the algorithm on that video for sake. Okay. So at that time, within 3 days, I had angina. So I had great results on 25 milligrams pharmaceutical Anavar per day, pumps galore, strength galore, all the cosmetic benefits that you would expect from such a high dose of Anavar. And within 3 days, I had terrible angina. It was crazy, right? I had chest pains after finishing a set. I went up to, I think it was the max dumbbells of 54 kilos for an incline chest press. So at the muscle factory here in Thailand, the dumbbells at the time went up to 54 kilograms. Now we have dumbbells up to 70 kilograms, but they're a little bit wobbly, and I rarely see anybody touch those for incline chest. For rows, yes, of course, everybody can row or shrug 70 kilo dumbbells, right? Maybe not anymore now that I'm off cycle, but back then, when I was still a tank, when I was still a gorilla, yeah, I certainly could do that. But incline chest pressing the 70 kilo dumbbells, forget about it. I got up to 54 kilos, 6 reps, 8 reps. I put them down and I sat there wondering if I was going to die. That's how bad it was. It literally felt like somebody took my heart and grabbed it from the front, not like a reach around. No, this actually felt like that scene of Indiana Jones, the Temple of Doom, where the priest reaches into the guy's chest and pulls out his heart. It was still beating for everybody to see in that scene. This kind of felt similarly, but in this case, the hand of the priest was still inside my chest and just squeezing it to the point I felt highly, highly uncomfortable. Again, this was within 3 days of running a double dose, 50 milligrams Anavar per day. So I sat down and let that moment dissipate. And in the wise words of Dexter Jackson, when something like this happens, you get injured or you get something deleterious occur in the gym, go home, live the fight another day. So I discontinued my workout right then and there after catching my breath and regaining my composure for about 20 minutes, 30 minutes in duration. That's how long I sat in the corner of the gym, just assessing the situation, what has just happened. I discontinued the Anavar and I didn't go back to the gym for about a week just to let everything metabolize. Now, again, the detection time of oxandrolone is about 3 weeks, so it stays into your system a little bit longer than that, but usually 1 week is more than enough time to kind of let most of these oral steroids leave the body and then get back to baseline. So when I went back to consecutive workouts, that didn't occur. Of course, I didn't take any oxandrolone after that. I, took my 3-month break to let my liver recover because I was pretty fucking scared when that happened. And if you're now thinking, Steve, what the hell are you talking about? This never ever happened to me when I was running up to 100 milligrams Anavar per day. Well, that's probably because your shit isn't pharmaceutical. It's probably turinable or severely underdosed. Maybe that 100 milligrams that you think you're running is actually 25 milligrams or only 20 milligrams, if that. Right? Or you're just not training hard enough to the point your heart actually gets taxed, right? When you train insane, I don't think that anybody out there needs more than 25 milligrams pharmaceutical grade Anavar per day. And that means that those 50 milligram troches that you might get from the compounding pharmacy, yes, you'll have to cut those in half. Don't do what I did, where you have to blister your fingers pressing out all of those 2.5 milligram tablets, all 20 of them, to get 50 milligrams pharmaceutical Anavar in your system in a single serving. Don't do it. Really, guys, don't do it, because I was on top of my electrolyte balance, right? My calcium, magnesium, my potassium, my sodium, all perfectly balanced, right? Just like Thanos always mentioned, perfectly balanced for myself as an individual. I was on top of my taurine, right? 5,000 milligrams per day. I was on top of my ubiquinol, 2 servings of 100 milligrams morning and evening, and then another 400 milligrams ubiquinol before going to the gym with shilajit fulvic acid. But to be fair, I wasn't on top of my pyrroloquinoline quinone, PQQ, and probably because it wasn't available at that time, or was too expensive, or I was simply not up to speed about PQQ supplementation in the context of cardiac function and mitochondrial benefits overall. Maybe that was the missing ingredient at the time that caused me to have angina running that much Anavar per day. But still, I was on top of everything, dude. I did my ultrasounds. I did my echocardiograms, my electrocardiograms. I didn't do an MRI or CT scan yet, but I did do those a couple of years later. And both the MRI and the CT scan showed a perfectly healthy and functional heart. No stenosis, no issues with the valves, no regurgitation, maybe trivial regurgitation, but that's actually quite normal in the context when you have slight heart enlargement. And even though I had slight heart enlargement, that was uniform, no left ventricular hypertrophy, and certainly no thickening of the walls, no issues with the atriums, no issues with the coronary arteries. So I'm not entirely sure why it happened. If I'm doing everything correctly and I'm doing my daily fasted cardio for overall heart function, and if it can happen to me, guess what? It can happen to you too, because I'm just a normal guy with normal genetic response. So if I don't advocate anything over 25 milligrams Pharma Anavar per day, my sincere apologies. It stems from personal experience. I got angina, So I don't want you to get angina also by running a higher dose over 25 milligrams per day. It never happened to me on the 1,000 milligrams of trenbolone per week or 2,000 milligrams of testosterone per week or a very high dose of anadrol in the context of carb loading, right? That's in combination with Winstrol injectable and Superdrol. So the amount of, DHT derivatives that I got into my system at that time in the context of carb loading, copious amounts, still didn't get angina. Only happened on 50 milligrams Pharma Anavar per day. So a word of caution, right? Please don't overdo it. It might happen. And if it doesn't happen, I'm very jealous because I would love to run 50 milligrams Pharmaceutical Anavar per day because I was f***ing strong and I looked jacked. I was a borderline gorilla, silverback gorilla that is, and now with the very low testosterone levels that we were able to investigate by reading the scientific literature of serum testosterone levels of a silverback gorilla, my testosterone levels were off the scale. So, a little bit of a word of caution, build up your doses slowly, and if something like this happens, just back off, go back home, let everything metabolize, and really assess the situation. If you have an underlying condition, which again, at the time I didn't have, I was doing everything right for heart function, but maybe a dose like this can bring up something to the surface that is already there. And instead of letting it sit there and just power shuffling right through because you want those gains, maybe you need to get it addressed. Maybe you need to do some imaging, right? To see if something is going wrong and catch it early on. All right, I'll leave it here. I'm sorry this story wasn't very exciting. It's just mostly a word of caution. Again, you guys wanted to know about the craziest cycles that I've done. Yeah, 50 milligrams Pharmaceutical Anavar. That was a crazy cycle for me. So crazy that I had to go back home and discontinue that altogether.